I think I spent about 2 years and 6 months working on it at the end of the day. We brought on another supervisor, Richard Bain, who was my co-supervisor, partially because neither of us could be in two places at once. It got to be such a complicated show, the Parnassus thing, that there was blue screen in Canada and miniatures in London and live action elsewhere, and it was just impossible to do with one guy. So both Richard and I spent it felt like centuries going through everything with Terry. It was very, very heavily researched and designed and pre-vised and mid-vised. And I guess I was involved in it from the first day Terry turned up with sort of a concept drawing till we delivered the last shot, which was a pretty long slog. With Terry's experience in visual effects and physical effects, miniatures, is enormous. He really, Brazil, things like that. He's always had a very clear idea of what things should look like in his head. He also has an encyclopedic visual education. He knows paintings in some depth, so we could sort of do a visual shorthand, like this would be like a Mika Tan picture, this would be like a Bruegel, and very easy to sort of communicate on that level with him because of the depth of his knowledge of the visual arts, which isn't always the case. A lot of directors come from writing, from on-set directing. Terry's background is very, very visual, and that's where his heart lies, which means that the involvement on the visual effects side was very, very strong. It didn't mean we always agreed. There were serious blood on the floor here and there, but at the end of the day, it's a Terry Gilliam picture, and we did our best to try and make it look like his vision. To some extent, the supervisor's position is there with someone like Terry, who is virtually his own supervisor, to be honest, in a lot of ways. Maybe not on the sort of computer side, but certainly on the physical side. You can suggest things and you can sort of point in directions, but at the end of the day, it's his vision that you have to sort of hone in on. And often with Terry, the tricky bit is trying to get a view of the picture he's got in his head. Terry was in every day during post-production for nearly a year, drawing on pieces of papers, felt pens on screens, working directly with the artists. And in some cases, the imagery is, when you see the end results of his work, you go, oh yes, that's very distinctive. But you have to imagine if there's nothing like that existed before and he's trying to explain it to you, it's quite difficult to get your head around where it's going to go. And in a lot of cases, it changes as you're doing it. Terry's not the sort of guy who says that's what it's going to look like and we're just going to stick to that. If something comes up during the design or the effects process, he'll adapt and change with it, and you have to sort of roll with those punches, which means that it was very, very demanding. I mean, working with a director with that strong a visual sense is both inspirational, but it can also be very frustrating because you can't see what's in his head. And you have to sort of make something and say, is this like it? Oh, that's terrible. Is this like it? Oh, that's a bit in the right direction. And eventually trap it. But he came in with a script, and then over the course of about a year's worth of pre-production, he storyboarded pretty much all the sequences himself, which he hasn't done for quite a few films. But because this was such a personal project, it was much better for us that it came straight from his own fingers. Particularly in the sense that some of the sequences are consciously Python-esque, and who can draw Python stuff like Terry? You can't sort of get a storyboard artist in to do it. You need to get the man himself. So he storyboarded it. He produced enormous amounts of visual references, and was very closely involved at every stage. The bad side of it is that there are physical limits to what you can do in visual effects in terms of time and turnaround. And very complex effects take time to build and time to render and time for people to do it. And someone like Terry can get very, very frustrated because he's like, I can see it, why can't you? And you're saying, Terry, we can see it too, but it's going to take us a while to build it. And that can actually be very frustrating for a guy who's very used to sort of doing stuff on set very quickly, making very quick creative decisions. To sort of say, come back in 3 weeks and keep that picture in your head till then is quite a difficult thing to do for someone who is as strongly creative as Terry. And that did make for a lot of how can I put it, friction in some cases. He like everyone else, he would much rather it could happen instantly, but these things don't. It's simple as that. In fact, the post-production I think went about 14 months in the end. There was also the aspect that we started with 250 shots and ended up with I think 850. as the techniques developed and the sequences grew. But as far as Terry was concerned, it was still the same concepts, so the extended timescale gradually got more and more frustrating for him, and it was tough on everybody. Very, very tough show to do. But then again, most of the interesting ones are. Strangely, a lot of the reviewers have taken the miniature work largely to be digital, which is a little bit depressing. And in some cases, the digital work they got wrong as well. Terry tells a great story about Grimm, where there was a very different look to the effects in that, and a reviewer interviewing him started sort of running them down, and Terry said, well, which one? Which was the worst one? And the reviewer went on at great length about this dreadful computer animated frog that Matt Damon licked. And Terry sort of listened to it for about 5 minutes before he just finally exploded. He said, that was a real frog, you idiots. There's no effects there. And it's true. We found a frog trainer in Prague who came in and trained the frog, and the frog did it. So you end up, he gets frustrated, and I get just as upset myself. You look at it and say, well, who is this evaluating this if they can't tell the difference? So there's been a sort of some of the diehards have said, oh, Terry should have stuck with physical effects, what's with all this CGI? There's probably more than half of the stuff in there is physical effects. It's just that they're done at a level, 10 years beyond the last time he did stuff like that.